Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Lisa with the Quiltmaker Homestead, and in today's video, in just a little over 30 minutes, I'm going to show you and walk you through step by step my latest trivet pattern. Don't you just love that? My love trivet. I plan on using this every day because everything I fix in my home is made with love. But this is perfect timing, right? With Valentine's Day coming up. Now, this is the perfect size trivet. It is foundation paper piecing. I'm going to walk you through all the steps in today's video. And I dare say, because it's so simple, you could probably make a couple of these in an afternoon. Are you ready to see how I did it? Let's go ahead and get started today's video by taking a look at the pattern and how I keep myself organized with all the different pieces and how I make some notes on those templates. Let's get started. So this pattern comes with paper foundations that we build our block on, and it also comes with fabric templates that you can pre-cut your fabrics with so that you have everything all ready to start piecing, right? There's also a fabric template map, which is really helpful because it shows you where all of these templates are used. And what I have found really helpful in staying organized with all of these pieces is making little notes on my fabric templates and on my fabric template map. I write how many pieces I need of each one of these little templates. I color in the fabric template map because that helps me see where all the different fabrics are going to go. And I just find that making notes for myself is really helpful, and that might be helpful for you, and you may not need to do that at all. Once you've gone through and cut out all of your paper foundations, your templates, and made your notes, you're ready to start cutting your fabric. Now, when using the pre-cutting templates for your fabric pieces, make sure you lay your fabric with the right side facing down and your paper templates with the right side or the printed side facing up. Now, if I only have a couple of pieces to cut out, then I cut them out individually, right? But if I'm cutting multiples of the same piece, because I need 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, then I will cut strips just wide enough for that foundation or that template. And I stack them all with the right side of the fabric facing down. And I cut multiples out at one time, which saves so much time. After you have all your fabrics cut out and ready to go, line up all your foundations, just like you see here on my mat. And again, I found it helpful to make some notes. I'm going to label each one of these foundations that we're placing the fabrics on with the template that I used to cut the fabrics. I just found that that helps me pull the correct fabric for the right piece we are working with, the right foundation, and just helps the whole sewing order go so much easier for me. So I wanted to pass along that tip. Go ahead and label each one of your foundations. Now this trivet is so dang simple. Most of these foundations, they only need one fabric. There's no piecing on most of them. Now, the actual piecing or foundation paper piecing that we need to do are on 2 of the foundations, and it's these 2 right here. And in today's video, because they're both the same, they're just a mirror image of each other, we're going to walk through sewing one of the foundations together. Now, before we do that, you might be wondering, what do we do with these foundations that only need one piece of fabric, right? On these templates, or these foundations, I keep saying templates, with these foundations, grab the corresponding fabric and place your fabric with the right side facing down on your mat. And I'm using a glue stick today, a Dollar Tree glue stick that does not work very well. And I'm using a little bit of glue stick to hold the paper to the fabric. And I'm going to heat set that with my iron and just dry the glue, which makes that bond a little bit stronger. Not strong enough with the Dollar Tree glue sticks, but we want that paper to stay with that fabric throughout the duration of sewing this block together. So for each one of the foundations that just need the one piece of fabric, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to trim these up like they're pieced. So we're going to line up the 1/4 inch line of our ruler to the inside line on that template, and we're going to perfectly square up and trim each one of these foundations. And then we're going to put them off to the side.
Tells a story, it tells days passing, it folds and seam, some memories of cast, embroidering my hopes, embellishing my fears, and everything.
Now that we have all of the easy foundations set aside, we're going to start on our first foundation where we're actually sewing some pieces to it. You'll notice on the foundations, they are numbered in a sewing order, and this is the order that we're going to add our fabrics. We're going to start right in the first position, and you might find it helpful to use a window or a light pad because you want that fabric placed so that fabric extends beyond all of the sewing lines and the paper foundation itself.
With a needle and thread, I stitch my story. In every design, I see my glory.
In today's video, I'm going to use a pin because I've decided to throw the Dollar Tree glue sticks out the window. They are not strong enough for this application, in my opinion. So I'm going to pin the first fabric to the foundation, and to get started, I want to trim away any extra fabric that extends beyond those sewing lines, leaving a 1/4 inch. So to do that, I'm going to use my add a 1/4 inch ruler. I'm going to fold the paper foundation on each one of the lines and trim away any extra fabric. This helps us line up the next pieces we're adding to that first fabric.
Perfection is sewn in this quilt of love, finally found home.
And now we're ready to add fabric number 2. So I like to lay it down in the position that it's going to look after it's pieced, and then flip it right side over and match up the raw edges of those fabrics. And we're going to be sewing right on the printed line. Now here at the sewing machine, I've lowered my stitch length to a 1.0. You might need to adjust that on your machine according to the fabrics you're using. And we're going to stitch right on that line from edge to edge all the way through. Now I'm going to flip this fabric over, and off camera I'm going to give it a quick press. And we are ready to start adding the third fabric. And we just repeat this process until the whole foundation is covered up.
In the quiet of the evening, I find my peace, stitching all my dreams together piece by piece. Patchwork patterns stand, colors come alive with each careful stitch, tossed to fry. Needle glides swiftly like a soothing balm. In midst of the stitching, I find my calm. So let the echo of fabric and thread each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single brush, my affection is sewn in this quilt of love, finally found home. Each fabric tells a story, it tells the days passing, it folds and seams, it's memories that cast, embroidering my hopes, embellishing my fears, and there is in curl, bending my years, threads of love connecting, holding strong and tight. In this quilt of life, I find my life. You're let down in a lack of fabric and thread. Each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single touch, my affection is sown. In this quilt of love, finally found home. With a needle and thread, I stitch my story. In every design, I see my glory.
Once you've added all the fabrics for that foundation, give it a press, and we're going to use our ruler, again matching up that 1/4 inch line to the inside line on the fabric foundation, and we're going to trim everything away, and it's going to give us the exact perfect piece that goes into our block. And for this pattern, you have one more foundation to sew just like that. Once you have all of your foundations together, I start by laying out the very center square, or the pieces that's going to make up the very center square of this trivet. We're going to start by sewing the 2 foundations that make up the heart. So I'm going to flip the right side over. Now, one of the things, because they're trimmed perfectly, you could just start sewing, right? But one of the things that I like to share is if you want to just double check to make sure that your seams line up, if you stick a pin through the paper side of one of them right at that seam intersection, right on the line, and you use a ruler on the other half on the front fabric side, and with a dissolving pin, you mark the 1/4 inch seam and stick your needle right through the fabric in that seam, double checking on the back side. You can kind of line up, if you leave that needle in there, you can kind of line up your fabrics so that that seam is sure to line up when you sew it.
The life I've led, with every single touch, my affection is sown. In this quilt of love, finally found home. With a needle and thread, I stitch my story. In every design, I see my glory.
Now, one of the things that I try to remember is to remove the paper from that seam allowance on both sides before I press it and move on. A lot of the times I forget to do that, but it does make it a lot easier to remove those bits of paper before you start adding more pieces to it than versus at the end when you're removing all the paper. But that's the only paper we're taking out for now, is just the paper in that seam allowance.
I find my calm. So let the neck of fabric and thread, each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single touch, my affection is sown in this quilt.
Once you've done that, I'm going to open up this seam and press that seam open. After pressing that seam, we're going to add both pieces to the top and bottom of this section right here. And they should just line up perfectly. And I'm going to bring these both over to the sewing machine and reline them up over there. And we're going to, again, sew right on that line. And I still have my stitch lengths set at 1.0. We're keeping that same setting through sewing the rest of the seams.
You're let down in a lack of fabric and thread. Each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single touch, my affection is sown. In this quilt of love, finally found home. With a needle and thread, I stitch my story. In every design, I see my glory. In the quiet of the evening I find my peace, stitching all my dreams together piece by piece. Patchwork patterns stand, colors come alive with each careful stitch.
Now once you've added those two pieces, remove the paper from the seam allowance, press those two pieces. We are adding the 4 additional parts that make up the outer square of this trivet. And in the same fashion, we're going to add opposite sides together, right? Top and bottom. We can do those both at the same time. We'll remove the paper from the seam, press those 2 pieces, and then we're adding the last 2 pieces, and everything should match up perfectly. And that's the awesome part of paper piecing, right? It does a lot of the perfect piecing parts for you.
Each fabric tells a story, it tells days passing, it folds and seam. It's memories of cast, embroidering my hopes, embellishing my fears, and there is in curl, bending my years, threads of love connecting, holding strong and tight. In this quilt of life, I find my life. You're let down the lack of fabric and thread. Each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single touch, my affection is sown. In this quilt of love, finally found home. With a needle and thread, I stitch my story. In every design, I see my glory. In the quiet of the evening I find my peace, stitching all my dreams together piece by piece. Patchwork patterns stand, colors come alive with each careful stitch, tossed to fry. Needle glides swiftly like a soothing balm. In this art of stitching I find my calm. So let the lack of fabric and thread, each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single touch, my affection is sown. In this quilt of love, finally found home. Each fabric tells a story, it tells days passing, it folds and seam. It's memories of cast, embroidering my hopes, embellishing my fears, and there is in curl, bending my years, threads of love connecting, holding strong and tight. In this
Now, once you've pressed those last 2 pieces, we're at the part that many people do not like about paper piecing, and that's removing all the papers. Unless you're weird like me, I actually find this part of the process satisfying. But go ahead and remove all the papers from the back side of the block now. Now, unfortunately, I thought I was recording, but I was not. And I thought about picking out the borders, but that was so much work. I have put in the description box a video that shows the process of exactly how I added the borders to this trivet without picking these borders out. Okay, so if you need help with adding the borders, check out that video. It shows you step by step. If you fast forward to the end of that video, adding the first 2 borders and then the next 2 borders and leaving an opening in that second set of borders, and that's the opening to turning this trivet right side out. So I'm so sorry, but it's a fun video to watch too. So after adding your borders, we're going to create the layers. Now I'm using 2 layers of cotton batting today. You could use a layer of cotton batting and insole braids. You could use 1 layer of batting. It's just not going to serve as much protection for your work surfaces as a trivet, right? But add your batting down first. Then add your back fabric with the right side facing up. And then your trivet goes right side facing down on top of everything. And I'm going to add lots and lots of pins because there's lots of cushion in this trivet, and I don't want things to squish around while we're sewing up and finishing up this trivet.
Days passing, it folds and seam. It's memories of gas, embroidering my hopes, embellishing my fears, and there is in curl, bending my years, threads of love connecting, holding strong and tight. In this quilt of life, I find my life. You're let down like a fabric and thread.
Once everything is pinned, we're going to bring it to the sewing machine, and we are sewing all the way around. Remember, our opening is in the border. So we're sewing all the way around, leaving no opening with a 1/4 inch seam allowance.
I stitch my story. In every design, I see my glory. In the quiet of the evening, I find my peace, stitching all my dreams together piece by piece. Patchwork patterns stand, colors come alive.
Once you're done sewing, I'm going to take some scissors and trim off the pokey ends of each one of these corners. And then I'm going to turn this right side out through that opening. And it's a pretty good size opening that I've left. I'd say a little over 2 inches. And the thing is, all the thickness of the 2 layers of batting, right? That all has to come through there. But I'm going to pull it all out. I'm going to smooth out all the seams all the way around and poke out each one of those corners. And then bring this over to the iron where I'm going to just flatten all the seams around the edges. And I'm going to straighten up where that opening is. And we're going to bring it to the sewing machine to finish up this trivet.
Each fabric tells a story, it tells days passing, it folds and seam. It's memories of gas, embroidering my hopes, embellishing my fears, and there is in curl, bending my years, threads of love connecting, holding strong and tight. In this quilt of life, I find my life. You're let down like a fabric and thread. Each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single touch, my affection is sown. In this quilt of love, finally found home. With a needle and thread, I stitch my story.
Now we're back at the sewing machine for the last time with this trivet. And I've increased my stitch length at this point to a 2.5. Whatever stitch length you use for quilting would probably do nicely. You might have to make some adjustments because of that double layer of batting. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a straight stitch right next to that seam, inside the border, but right next to that seam all the way around. And what that's going to do is close the opening that we used to turn this trivet right side out. And what's nice about that is there's no messy opening that we've had to turn along the edges. All of our edges of this trivet are perfect. Now, while we're here, you might want to do some quilting. I'm going to do a stitch in the ditch along all of the squares, the inner squares of this trivet. Remember, we have 2 layers of batting in there, and I plan on using this trivet a lot. And it might get messy, right? Depending on how messy my casseroles are. And I plan on washing this trivet a lot. With the 2 layers of batting, we need them anchored. So some kind of quilting to keep those layers anchored would be really helpful. So there's all kinds of different things you could do, some different decorative stitches. You could put your free motion foot on and have fun quilting this. I'm keeping it super simple, and I think it's perfect. Isn't it so pretty? I think the quilting with 2 layers of batting is always beautiful. But go ahead and quilt your trivet and you are all done.
Let the Lack of fabric and thread, each quilt I'm stitching is the life I've led. With every single touch, my effect.
All I have left to do is trim my threads, and my trivet is ready to be used. Isn't she so pretty? Now, if you make this trivet, I would love to see it. You can share pictures of it over on the Creative Crew. There's a link for that down in the description box as well. So I hope to see your trivets over there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. What did you think about this new style of me popping in on the video like this? I've had a lot of fun. I hope you have too. I will see y'all really soon. Bye, everybody.
Stitching all my dreams together piece by piece. Patchwork patterns stand, colors come alive. With each careful stitch, toasted fried. Needle glides swiftly like a soothing balm. In this art of stitching, I find my calm. So let the